It's actually very hard to believe this. A country known for its prevalence in a never-ending war, random attacks and famine is today shocking the world as its economy has been constantly changing in a very good figure. We are speaking about Somalia, of course. Somalia is a country in the Horn of Africa, and it is bordered by Ethiopia to the west, Djibouti to the northwest, the Indian Ocean to the east, and Kenya to the southwest. Did you know that Somalia has been experiencing a silent growth in its economy despite the problems it's facing today? I'm sure you still can't believe it, but this Muslim world has been regenerating itself in recent years. Wait, before we continue shocking you more on this, we just want you to support our work with a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell for more of our videos on the world of economics. Without further ado, then let's dive right into it. When you are leaving the USA to Somalia, there's usually a procedure that you must follow before you leave the country. The State Department recommends that passengers leave their expensive belongings behind, draft a will, establish a proof of life protocol, appoint someone to look after the estate, and assign someone to be the point of contact with hostage takers. A very daunting task indeed, isn't it? Of course, you might be feeling bad about doing all these, but it's very important for the security of your belongings and yourself. Somalia is a country that has held a very long history of civil unrests and organized military groups like Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda, that even the USA withdrew its embassy from the capital of Mogadishu in 1991 and set up its operations in Kenya instead, because Kenya was considered safer. Somalia is an interesting and also confusing economic case study to understand. How are such suboptimal outcomes maintained in an economy that even the largest and most powerful military in the world struggles to set up permanent operations there? Now the answer to this question lies with the weak government itself. Yes, Somalia has a purged group that is better at coordinating the economy than the government. This is a direct indication of how things have clearly gone wrong and that those things haven't gotten much better. The economy is ranked as one of the poorest in the world, with the average person producing just over $1 in economic output. For starters, the country has a well-recognized government, but its borders have long been riddled with disputed regions and areas under the control of self-declared states and military organizations. Today, Somalia effectively operates as two distinct states, with Somalia and its current government controlling the south of the country, and the separatist Somaliland claiming de facto independence in the north. The nationhood is not currently recognized by any other country in the world or any organization like the UN, the IMF, or the World Bank. Something that surprises us the most is that Somaliland has representative offices all over the world, including Canada, the USA, and Australia. These aren't officially embassies, but they do act like ones. On the other hand, Somalia has what is known as de jure sovereignty, one that is recognized. Somalia, as a whole nation, despite its two systems, has been struggling for many years with difficulties and several problems. Maybe these are some of the reasons why it doesn't have its place in the global economy. But if it has any dreams of being recognized in the global economy, then it has to invest into infrastructure, security, and industries. Investors somewhat fear to even invest in the country. Besides just investments, it's difficult to supply humanitarian services because it comes down to knowing what organizations to work with in different parts of the country, and being very careful that they don't take the supplies for themselves. So why is the country so unsafe to start anything? This should take us back to 1991, when the government lost its economic support after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the country quickly plunged into a civil war. This led to a humanitarian crisis, where the people who were mostly dependent on subsistence agriculture were forced out of their lands, causing a famine that threatened the lives of millions. The UN got involved in the humanitarian operations, but quickly required military assistance as they were targeted for their food by their warring factions. This eventually resulted in US-led operations across the country, like the unsuccessful Battle of Mogadishu, which is probably best known as the Black Hawk Down incident. The conflict later spread across the country and destroyed a lot of what little infrastructure the economy did have in place, which meant that the small non-agrarian industries that did exist in Somalia before the war were just not available afterwards. In fact, most economists are suggesting that the economy ran better in a totally stateless, anarchical aftermath of the Civil War that it did during the authoritarian rule before 1991. Just to mention a few key developmental indicators like GDP per capita, life expectancy, infant mortality, maternal mortality, and access to healthcare all improved when the country had no government and individual towns would basically just run themselves. This is because the crop state was such a drain on the economy's limited resources that the order the government provided was not worth the mismanagement and the theft it was overseeing. A very good example of this is the Somalian shilling, which has been in existence since its inception in 1921. When we compare this to other far wealthier and more stable economies from around the world, you will find that those countries have replaced their currency, like multiple times in the past century. Why? It's because they have done irreparable damage with things like hyperinflation or currency depegging. Somalia has not been having a very stable government, central bank or mint for such a long time. This country has been having a very stable money supply, and it's not printed new cash since 1991, when the previous government fell. Its economy has always been informal, and almost all of its transactions are held in cash. While most of the other developing nations are still struggling with killing inflation, Somalia has actually been in a state of deflation and very consistent foreign exchange rates. Somalia is home to very basic industries that don't require a lot of oversight, infrastructure, or assistance from government services. Talk of things like selling crops at a local market, selling of second-hand clothes, and many more. They are not going to benefit too much from the government officials looking to take their cuts from bribes or extortion money that could make the whole situation go sour. When we look at things like great technologies for computers, banking, and many more, they are actually going to benefit from government assistance. Speaking of big high-end businesses, where will they run from? Is their security guaranteed? True to say, such businesses will need a very proper infrastructure like roads and ports to get their products to the markets, both domestically and internationally. And not only that, they also need guaranteed protections to ensure that people don't steal their technologies, and physically make sure that their facilities are not ransacked by armed groups. Talking of armed groups, because of lack of oversight by the government, it has enabled the outcome of other dangerous industries. Piracy. Well, in the world today, we all have to accept the fact that there are countries that contribute more to the global economy than others. For a long time, Somalia has been one of the unique cases, such that instead of adding to the economy, it is subtracting from it. At the height of piracy off the coast of Somalia, the attacks were estimated to be costing the global economy between 12 and 18 billion US dollars per year in additional insurance, naval operations, and alternative shipping routes further away from the coast of Somalia. Still on piracy, Somalia has enjoyed years and years of free market dynamics without interference from the government. The piracy market was one of the most expensive and lucrative options for most people, adding to the fact that they had to steal expensive belongings being ferried by ships, and also the whole operation demanded a great capital to purchase weaponry, radars and boats capable of carrying out the activity. To shock you more on this, the country organically developed a stock market of sorts for pirate raids, where people could invest as a group into boats and equipment and share in the profits from a successful raid. Yes, with no functioning government, people usually came together to make sure that this market operated effectively and securely enough to keep it a multi-billion-dollar industry for over a decade. A thumbs up to the country because as of recent, the piracy has declined. This has changed because of a strong naval presence over the coast, and the government finally became a more established one. Today, the city of Mogadishu is going through something of a developmental bloom. Since the formation of the new government, the economy of Somalia has been growing, and it's also becoming less dependent on activities such as piracy. Even though the country is still in a state of poverty, people's lives have been improving, and that is greatly evident when we look at the city of Mogadishu today. Those citizens who had escaped the country to abroad because of the calamities have already started coming back, bringing in their purchasing power from overseas. Their coming back has interestingly brought another problem for this underdeveloped economy. High costs of almost everything, electricity, housing, goods and services, and security, which will actually chase them out again, thereby creating a risk of no new industries coming up. But if Somalia counters this problem, we will definitely see a change in its economy. The cropping up of new industries, developed infrastructures, and many more goodies for any great economy will become more evident. That alone will give Somalia the best chance of never regressing back to the lawlessness it had before. What are your thoughts on the same? Please don't forget to leave your suggestions in the comment box below. Here marks the end of our video today. We hope you guys loved it and learned something from it. What about you send us those likes? We will highly appreciate if you also support our work by sharing this video and subscribing to it, so that you can get a whole stream of new uploads that we will be updating every now and then. Thanks for watching, and let's meet in our next video.